today, my question is about conscience. I know the church teaches that it's very important. I've heard it described as the aboriginal vicar of Christ. And I've heard you quote before, even Martin Luther saying to disobey conscience is neither right or safe or something like that.
Yep.
But then the thought occurred to me, like, what if someone truly, in their conscience, sincerely believes something that's false, that the church has defined to be false, and then at the end of their life, just goes ahead and recants that position just so they wouldn't be considered a heretic at the end. But truly, that act of recanting, they went against their conscience because they still believe this error sincerely.
Sure.
I have a hard time squaring the two.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So we have an obligation to follow erroneous conscience. You have an obligation to follow erroneous conscience. You also have an obligation to try to make your conscience not erroneous. Now, that's not always easy to do.
No.
All right? Now, what happens if you follow erroneous conscience? Are you guilty of sin? Well, it depends. It depends on why your conscience is erroneous. So let me give you an example. Many people today, and look, I've done this, so I know it's easy to do.
Okay.
Get wrapped up in conspiracy theories of one kind or another. And the nature of the conspiracy theory is it blinds you to contradictory evidence. Because when someone presents contradictory evidence to you, you say, well, that's just part of the grand conspiracy to hide the truth of blank, And so, an unwillingness to confront your own dogmatism, particularly when it serves the interests of your set or your group or your tribal identity, that can be in part motivated by pride. Those kinds of things can make you more or less responsible for your ignorance. But it is possible. Let's say you're the child of a conspiracy theorist.
Mm-hmm.
And, you don't really have a well-developed sort of critical reason. And so you just take, on authority what your loved ones tell you to be the case about the world. And so you're grossly ignorant. And it really is not your fault, and you're not motivated by pride or hubris or tribalism or anything like that. You're operating in good faith. Obviously, that person is totally innocent of their ignorance. Does that mean that erroneous conscience has no consequences if you are totally innocent? No, it has serious consequences. I'll give you another example from the same case. I know people, personally, who believe that the modern medical establishment is basically controlled by the Antichrist, and that it is a great conspiracy to, hurt civil society and the people of God and you name it. And so they sort of radically reject modern medical care for their children in preference to some real wackadoodle theories that don't work. Now, for the sake of argument, let's assume that they're innocent in their ignorance, that they're not morally culpable for their ignorance. But their kids still get sick.
Yeah.
So because they're ignorant and unwilling or unable to be enlightened on this issue, there are real-world consequences that cause harm to people. And so erroneous conscience is not indifferent. It's very, very important. And this is why one of the virtues that we talk little of, but what I think we should talk about all the time, is developing the virtue of prudence, to have the habit of good decision-making, which means taking counsel from people we don't agree with, taking counsel from people that are not in our set.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think St. Thomas Aquinas modeled this beautifully. Thomas lived at a time when there was a sort of deep embedded ideological position within the church, in particular about Augustinianism, and the Christian world was confronted with a contrary philosophical worldview, namely Arabian Aristotelianism. And there were some people that just said, away with the heretics, and there were others that joined the heretics. And St. Thomas said, no, we need to listen very, very carefully because some of these people are not stupid. And we need to be open to the truth wherever we can find it, docile to the truth, but not naive.
Mm-hmm.
And seek to take the best arguments of those that are sort of outside our group. And then if we find them to be true on the merits, to try to assimilate them into the Christian worldview.
Wasn't it Abraham Lincoln who had on his cabinet a number of men at the time who clearly disagreed with Lincoln on this thing or this thing over here, and but he welcomed their input.
Yes, the opposite vice is what they call surrounding yourself with yes men.
Yeah, yeah.
And, there's some world leaders today that have made some gross miscalculations because of the determination to surround themselves with yes men.